We are down to our final two sessions of this year's program, and I think you're going to like the next two that we have coming up. It is my pleasure to introduce our Fall Protection Council Chairperson, Becky Danielson, as our next presenter. Becky is a highly skilled and qualified, results-oriented height safety professional with over 20 years' experience in training and business development gained in various industries, including telecommunications, energy, confined space, construction, and health. Becky is the chair of the Scaffold and Access Industries Fall Protection Council and also sits on various ANZ Fall Protection Committees. And now, here is Fall Protection and Rescue Plans with Becky Danielson.
Thank you. And you all had lunch and they just dimmed the lights, so just know if you fall asleep, I will come and sit right next to you. And everyone will know you're sleeping. So, but hopefully that doesn't actually happen. So, so they turned the lights back on. So, as Paula lovely said, that I am the chair of the Fall Protection Council. I'm Becky Danielson. And so we're going to talk about fall protection programs, rescue plans. But there's something I want to do first. First thing I want to do is, if there is a fire, please look at the green signs. Run for the stairs. Don't run for the elevator. Ever. And if you don't like the person you're next to and you feel that sudden urge to shove them down the stairs, don't. It'll come back to haunt you, I promise. I don't think we're in tornado stuff, so. But nobody really talked about that when we were kind of doing all this stuff, so thought I'd throw it out there because it's there, right? And the other thing I want to do is thank Jackie and all the lovely people behind the scenes that put up with me, because it's not easy with somebody who's always going all over everywhere. And she's like, hey, you need to do this. Can you please do it? She's always very kind and very nice, but they do a lot of work behind the scenes that we don't see. And they put up with a lot of lovely people like myself. So I would like to give a round of applause to Jackie and the lovely ladies behind the scenes. So those of you who were around when I did my first presentation for committee week, which apparently was very entertaining, I did not really feel that way, but hey. So I first came in, stood up, looked down and went, I forgot my dress shoes. So now it's kind of a thing that I wear tennis shoes, but mostly because I don't want to fall off of this thing with heels on. So, and since it's lunch, after lunch, and everybody's kind of relaxing, what I want you to do is I want everybody to stand up in the room. Oh, you thought this was going to be like where you just got to sit and listen to me? Come on now. This is safety, right? All right. No, we won't do stretching and calisthenics. Everyone that has children, please sit down. Boy, everybody got really excited there. Everyone that has a significant other or someone that claims them, sit down. Everyone that has parents, sit down. You don't have parents? Do you have grandparents? You have no one? Oh, we love you. I love you. So I am now your mother. You can sit down. So you can go ahead and sit. Someone loves you. I love you. So we're good. But I do this, and I do this a lot. And the reason that I do this is so that if you look around the room, is there anyone left standing except for me? Nope. Because someone wants you to come home at the end of the day. Whether they claim you or not, that I can't help you with, right? But that is why we do what we do. That is why we focus on height safety and fall protection and the hazards and all the things that are involved in all of that, is so that not only do we do our job, the goal is that we do our job safely so we don't have to worry about all that, right? And I know you're just itching for the rescue part of it. But we want to make sure that we're looking at all of this, because hopefully you care about the people that are out in the field climbing around and working at height. And so I always do that because it's a very, reminder, a good reminder of why we focus on this, why we work on this, why we do what we do, why I do what I do every single day. I have been in fall protection for almost 20 years. Many of you already know this. I have not veered in any other direction but fall protection. And the reason is that I meet so many amazing people out there in the field that actually care about it as well. Oh, I forgot my little thing. Sean, my technology. So I also brought duct tape in case someone gets feisty. So if we have to shut y'all down, right? There we go. So we're going to talk about fall protection programs first. And ANSI just launched the new ANSI Z359.2. They really didn't change a lot, but what they did was they took a lot of the words and terminations and sentences that could leave it up to your interpretation, and they took a lot of that away. So it's very straightforward. Now, there are some things that they did add, and this is one of them. So it's basically kind of laying out how the entire program should work, right? And so what's the employer's responsibility, okay? So as an employer, what's your responsibility? You have to determine authorized person, competent person, program administrator, and if you need a qualified person. Now, here's where this industry gets really fun. There are different definitions or different ways that competent person and qualified person are looked at. So you have that part of your rigging brain, you have part of that, set it aside for fall protection. It is different, okay? One of the things that they did change in this, so they basically say you have to have a program, you have to lay it out, you have a program administrator that you put in charge, that is in charge of that program. They're the ones that update it, they're the ones that do all the work in it, they're the ones that are, maintaining it. But what they did add was they added that you shall provide an appropriate number of competent persons that support the program. That is new. So they're looking at making sure that you have enough of the competent person to support that program, not just one, right? So laid out in your program, you have to look at also that. There we go. So the definitions. So what is a program administrator? I am not going to read this. You are a full-grown adult. You can read this. I'm sure that this presentation will be provided somehow, some way. But a program administrator is someone that within the company writes the entire fall protection program. And guess what? Within that is the rescue plan, the rescue program. I lost my water. I have no idea where it went. I am the poster child for ADHD, so I might go, thank you so much. I love my coworkers. Competent person, right? So that is someone that usually is kind of a lead person or a supervisor that can identify the hazards, they know the regulations, and they can take prompt corrective measures, okay? And then we get into an authorized person. So to boil that down, that's the person that's out there actually doing the job every day. They are given that specific task, that specific job, and that's what they do, right? That's the authorized person. So all those people that are out working everywhere, that's that person. Qualified person, this is my favorite one because everybody goes, oh. So a qualified person is either a structural engineer or someone by extensive training or knowledge that can do the calculations for anchorage. So that is why we look at that qualified person. So if you're using a horizontal lifeline, if you're using permanent anchors, qualified person needs to be involved in that because we know that OSHA says that if you put a horizontal lifeline, it has to be designed and installed under the supervision of a qualified person. That's in OSHA. So, any questions on the definitions? Okay, nobody's sleeping quite yet. Todd's on his phone, but that's all right. So I told you. Training. So when they went into this, they went a little bit deeper, and now they're saying that as a trainer, you do an assessment. So basically, so if you have internal trainers, they do this needs assessment based on your authorized persons, the job scope, all of that. And so they do this assessment, and then the training comes from that. The curriculum comes from that. Third-party trainers, they have to do that. But within the standard, it actually details, like it's step by step what you have to do and what that training needs to include, what trainers need to know, all of that jazz. Oh, snap. Somebody's phone's actually ringing. Oh, my God. Oh, seriously. Nope. I just changed that one. So oh, Joe. So retraining, basically, the two things that they added. So we all know what OSHA says. OSHA says that basically the change in equipment, the change in your workplace. So anytime you change equipment, you need to do training on it. Anytime you change the job scope, the workplace, that has to have training. Anytime that you have someone that obviously is not getting it, then they need to be retrained. So what ANSI did is they added two things. So they added, if the program changes, you need to do retraining, or if all of that is fine, then every 2 years. So basically, OSHA says 3 out of the 5, right? And then they just added the other 2. So any questions on training? You're still not sleeping yet, are you? That table back there was not quiet earlier today, so I'm kind of shocked that they're still that quiet. All right, so here's the biggest thing, fall hazard surveys, right? Okay, so hazards. Do you see 2 or hear 1 and see the other? No, there's hazards all over in this room. Remember how I said you're not just going to sit there? So I have 2 elevated platforms that are here. So you're all going to get up. This half of the room is going to go here, and this half of the room is going to go over here. You all just went, oh my God, I hate her so much. But you're going to do it. So you guys all get up and come over here. This side has more people, so let's see how this context works out. And then this side is going to find all the hazards on this side, and this team is going to find all the hazards on this side. So we have an elevated platform, but we also have some other things around the room in that area that are hazards. So you're going to tell me what they are. Oh, the grumbling. Yep, everybody's like, oh my God, she's making us get up. All right, so on this side of the room, what do we have? Yep, we got a trip hazard. What else do we have? So our housekeeping, right? Right? So one of the things that's on our JSA, JHA, right? So in a fall protection program, we have to look at the workplace and we have to do the hazards. Okay? And so we do a hazard analysis and a hazard survey. And then we have JSAs that are kind of built within that program. So I'm kind of blending a little bit of the two, but we have to look at those hazards, right? And so, what? That one, I don't know. I don't have any pyrotechnics, so I guess I'm not super worried about it yet. But if we light off some fireworks, then I might be a little concerned. Oh, Sean's technology. All right, so. Okay, what else do we have? So we have a trip hazard. We have debris, so our housekeeping, correct? What else do we have?
You got a fall hazard right there. You got something right at your leading edge, which is the 7 multiplier.
So dropped objects, correct? Right? So we have dropped objects. We have a few of those floating around. So what else do we have?
Egress.
So we have the pliers.
That include the coffee cup full of bolts.
There we go. Yep, we've got our coffee cup full of bolts. You're standing in front of one. You got a hammer. Anything else?
Yeah, Sean.
That's hazardous. That's not.
Said the hardest
And-
now.
There you go. So what, and how many times do we see this in the field? Almost every time. Because the leg straps are what? Meh. So we do what? I don't, but what do the people in the field do? Drop them. Here's the thing. No matter what manufacturer it is, that webbing is rated for over 5,000 pounds. If anything is moving next to that, that person is going for a ride, and the forklift driver isn't going to hear him, the truck driver isn't going to hear him, and he's going to be dragged alongside or backwards or whatever. Okay? So awesome job. You guys got them all. I'm very proud of you. So let's see how well these guys do.
Hey,
So here's the challenge, right? So now, and this is a bigger group, right? Even though some people are like, yeah, whatever, you're crazy. Okay, so what do you got for hazards over here? Okay, ignore the knot. I just threw it there. Okay, so we have another coffee cup full of bolts. What else do we have? Yeah, so how many times do you see this, right? Crisscrossing ropes everywhere because one person's going this way, one person's going that way. Now you've got all this stuff. Now we have our trip hazard, right? So what else do you see? From? There you go. Anything that is on an edge or whatever becomes what if it falls? Remember, so let's just say we're 50 stories up. It becomes a what? Speeding bullet, right? New Jersey, construction worker, 50 stories up, dropped a 25-foot tape measure. What do you suppose happened down below? Hit a guy in the head and he died. This is years ago, but it happened. Okay, anything else?
Harness not properly.
Yep. So we got our guy. What did you hear when I started talking about hazard surveys? Okay, so when we're doing our JSA or hazard, we have to factor in the environment, right? So if the weather changes, guess what? So does all of our hazard analysis. Lightning, not our friend at all, correct? Because we're where? Oh, way up high. On what? Metal. Probably not the best idea, right? So we have to pay attention to that, and then I tried to find a fan, I couldn't find one. So in the environment, the other enemy we have is what? Wind. Oh, do we ever, right? So wind picks up, everything starts moving. Try being on a cell phone tower when the wind's really moving. Okay, you got two more that you got to find. Oh, this side did so much better. Y'all are standing right in front of it. There you go. I brought that duct tape for Sean just in case he got lippy. Yeah, we got the trip hazard. So you got duct tape and... Okay. So one of the biggest things that we see is drop objects because what? We don't want to take the time to tether them, protect them, because we're never going to drop anything. And we have that kick plate, right? That'll save it all. Till you have a 5-gallon bucket of tools that just fell right over that, right? Make sense? Okay, you guys can go sit down. You did very well. I promise I won't make you get up any more today. Except for Joe. His phone rang. He's a dead man. So when we start looking at our fall hazard survey for our program, there are things that we look at. So does anybody know the hierarchy of fall protection? Sean, be quiet. Okay, what's the first one we have to look at? close. So if we're looking at the hierarchy of fall protection, the number one thing we want to do is what? Eliminate that hazard. If we can eliminate that hazard and not have to have someone go up there, and it's really hard to do in our industry. It is so very hard to do. There are some industries that are starting to use drones to do inspections so that they're not actually putting someone at height. Okay? So eliminating the hazard works a little bit easier in a general industry application than it does in our industry. But there is some technology that is coming out that some people are using. However, technology tends to be what? Expensive, right? People don't want to pay for fall protection and safety anyway right now as it is, so paying for all that. But, so we look at the hierarchy of fall protection. So we want to eliminate the hazard, right? What's the next one? Okay, so engineered or substitution. What is that? Yeah, so what would be an example of that at heights? There you go, guardrail. Need to be what? You know, I don't have to run it through you. Okay, so then we get into fall restraint. We forget about fall restraint, and I think this was like one of the first things I talked about when I got into the SAIA, and we forget about restraint almost every time. And restraint is something very easy and simple to use if we understand it. And so, what is fall restraint? Restraint means that I cannot make it to any unprotected side or edge, okay? But you don't have to go crazy with it. There's one company that I was like, this is the most expensive restraint system I've ever seen. They put an SRL in a tank. It was a round tank. And it was 20 feet all the way around. So they put an SRL all the way around, and that was their restraint. I was like, you have the easiest application, but you picked the most expensive piece of equipment. Hey, you do you. That's fine, right? But it's thinking about that. So we need to, when we're doing our fall protection program, we need to start with eliminating the hazard, getting into engineering or a substitution so that we are not putting someone at that risk of an unprotected side or edge, okay? But restraint, we need to look at that. It can be used in a lot of different applications, especially if we're struggling with our clearance calculation, right? So a lot of times if we're struggling with our clearance calculation, then we really need to look at what do we do? And restraint usually kind of comes into play. Doesn't always work, but it does. And then we get into our fall arrest system, okay? I won't get into, that'll take us down some giant weed hole, so we'll stay away from that. But you know what fall arrest is, right? When I say fall arrest, what does everybody think of? Harness and, yeah, hands down every time. There's more to it now. 20 years ago when I got into this, I was a firefighter, and they said, here's a belt, here's some rope, go get that guy out of the grain bin. I went, huh? Seriously? That's what you're giving me? And they're like, yep. I was like, oh, okay. We did it, but now, just like Sean talked about, if anybody sat through Sean's lovely presentation about a lot of potty stuff, but about technology, right? And so technology, you all have a cell phone. We know Joe has one. It rang already, right? So that advances every year. Oh, now the iPhone 15, iPhone 16, 17. We'll just keep going down the line, right? But as that advances, we have technology that advances. And the best thing that we have when it comes to fall protection, and all the manufacturers have it, is who? You guys, because you tell us what we need, right? You tell people on the committees, people that are building the equipment, manufacturing it, doesn't matter whether it's a standards committee, you tell us what the issues are, what the needs are, and that is what we really, truly look at. And then we have this little thing called administrative controls. So, does anybody know what administrative controls means? Ha! That is exactly it, right? That means that, you know, basically, Rick is on a roof in Canada, and he's walking right to the edge, and I say, Rick, you're next to the edge. And he's standing next to an HVAC unit that's going, "Wah," right? Can you hear me? So, administrative control. Now, I will tell you that there are some people that have, usually roofing companies, have laid out that if by using fall protection causes a greater hazard, I really didn't mean for my voice to jump that high, but if it causes a greater hazard, then you can use administrative controls, but you better be detailed and you better be able to prove without a shadow of a doubt that by using fall protection does cause a greater hazard. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. So you'll notice that the way that this is laid out is that elimination is at the top bigger, and then everything else goes down. Where does fall protection float into, or fall arrest? Down towards the bottom. But what, when I say height safety or fall protection, what do you automatically think of? Be honest. A harness and a lanyard. We all do, right? Fall protection, harness and lanyard. But the whole point of the way that they redid the standard, and the whole thing that ASSP is talking about it a lot, there's a lot of people that are starting to look at, hey, can we be doing things better? Are we looking at this the right way? Is there, across the board, how do we do this better? How do we protect people better before we get to that point, right? So the minimum requirements for procedures, basically that you have to lay out the minimum, which is the authorized person and what they're exposed to, and that you have to provide that continuous fall protection the entire time that they're working. And it's usually, all of this stuff is very, very site specific. So fall protections plans that go to 8 million different sites, that's where it gets tricky. Incident investigation is incredibly important, right? We need to do this, but before we get to this point, we need to make sure that our people are comfortable telling us that they did have an incident. Because a lot of times what happens? They're not telling anybody. Are you kidding? They just keep working. They fell into their stuff. They just keep working, right? So it's about making sure that everybody knows that we need to look at this. We need to look at why did it happen and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's what investigations or incident investigations are really about, right? So the other thing that they added within this is that you need to evaluate the program. Like anything, we need to evaluate it to make sure it's working, right? Make sure that what we have set up. A lot of companies that I work with, because they make me help them with it, they say, well, we just change it every time a standard changes. Well, did you change all your equipment last year? Well, yeah. Well, did you change how you're doing things? Yeah. Well, these things need to be updated just like a JSA or JHA or whatever you want to call it now. Boy, they have all kinds of names for all of it, right? So that needs to be evaluated every 2 years. And that's something that they've really kind of detailed out within the standard, is that, looking at it, making sure that everything is working, and making sure that you're updating it according to all the standards. Okay? All right. So who's ready for rescue? This is why you all are here, because it's rescue, right? Okay, so it's the number one thing that gets overlooked. Every time I go somewhere and talk to people and I say, what's your rescue plan? What do you think they tell me? 911. Huh. That's okay. But here's the thing. There's stuff that you have to do before that comes into play. So the question is, do you have a rescue plan? There are a lot of people that I go visit and they're like, no, do we have to have that? Okay, do I have to hit something special now, or do I have to hit it again?
Hey, Fire protection.
Again, this is the USS Montana requesting that you immediately divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Over.
Please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid collision.
This is Captain Hancock. You will divert your course. Over.
Negative, Captain. I'm not moving anything. Change your course. Over.
Sir, this is the USS Montana, the second largest vessel in the North Atlantic Fleet. You will change course 15 degrees north, or I will be forced to take measures to ensure the safety of this ship. Over.
This is a lighthouse, mate. It's your call. Hello, Captain?
So, was he
I
wrong?
think he's gone. Fair enough.
No. I am the biggest, I am the baddest, and you are going to get out of my way. But what didn't he do? Didn't ask any questions. He didn't. Who are you? What? Right? So he didn't ask the questions, and I kind of jumped ahead when I was talking earlier. So we need to do the same thing with rescue, right? So basically, if we want to use 911, okay, that's cool, but did you talk to them? Did you ask them? If it's rural, do they have the capability? Will they come and get them? If they don't have the capability, they're going to tell you, we'll help you out when you get them to the ground, right? So it's about asking the right questions. So it's okay. You know, some people get feisty about it, but 911 is okay if you ask the right questions. If there's a 4-alarm fire down the block, do you have the extra staff when I have somebody suspended in midair? Because we know that we are going to have a problem if we have somebody suspended in midair, right? Especially if they're what? Unconscious. Because the clock started, right? And so we need to get them down. So OSHA says that the employer shall provide for a prompt rescue or shall assure that the employee can rescue themselves. Okay? So that kind of rolls into the hierarchy of rescue. So we have the hierarchy of fall protection, so we have the hierarchy of rescue. So obviously the most important is self-rescue. Oh, heck yes. I am the most vested in that if I fell, right? I want to get down. Okay? So, and this only works if I'm what? Right? And using the right tool for the job so that I can what? Reach. Okay. So, however, we really don't want to cause damage to a building, so breaking a window should be your last resort, which apparently seems to be like the most entertaining thing that everyone goes to if they are suspended along a building. They're just going to break the window because the firefighters do it. Well, there's a difference between when a firefighter does it and when we do it. Okay? So self-rescue means that I can rescue myself. I didn't fall that far. By the way, using SRLs is a form of self-rescue because you don't fall that far and you likely can reach wherever you are at. However, that doesn't work in all applications, especially if you're on a horizontal lifeline. So, assisted self-rescue. So that means that the person fell, they got hurt, and they can't do it themselves, but they're conscious, right? Now, here's the thing to remember. The game can change at any time, right? So they're conscious, and all of a sudden, boom, then what happens? They go unconscious, right? Clock starts, because we know that suspension trauma will start to take a hold. If they are suspended and we don't do anything, what will happen to them? They will die. That's what suspension trauma is, or orthostatic intolerance. So then we get into assisted rescue. So this means that the game changed. I usually have a whiteboard where I can draw all kinds of stuff in it. So assisted rescue means they are no longer conscious. Now the rescuer rescues that person, okay? And there are so many systems out there that if you can get to wherever they're anchored to, there's so many systems that are very, very easy to use. We'll talk a little bit. Rescue pickoff, last resort. However, there are certain applications where this is needed. And what does this mean? This means that now we're adding someone else to the risk mix because they are suspended. They are lowering themselves down. They are hooking up to that person. They're not hooked up together. They're just hooked up to a separate system together. Okay? But that means that they have to invert, hook up, and physically, now this is a physically demanding rescue, but they have to lift that person up and then release them off what they're on, and they both go down together. Now, there's a few reasons that we do this. We do this if the landing zone is potentially dangerous because we need to protect them on the way down, right? But this involves a lot more training than most people are willing to kind of get into, okay? But there's a lot of things where you don't have to put somebody at risk if you can get to where they're anchored to. So when we look at a rescue plan, we don't figure this plan out after the fall took place, right? We do this prior because it's all on your what? JSA, JHA, right? Okay? So we need to make sure that we clearly state who we contact, each company has a different enacting your emergency response plan, what that is, okay? So in rescue, and I've been doing rescue for a really long time, we use an acronym called SAVE. So we do scene assessment, activate our emergency response plan, so everybody needs to know what that is, correct? Right? And then we verify where our anchor is and we execute that rescue. So it should be just like clockwork. And there's so many systems out there that are like idiot resistant. I will never say idiot proof because someone out there will prove me wrong, right? The most important thing in rescue is communication. I cannot stress this enough, right? So it has to be clear, concise. I was a judge at a confined space rescue challenge in Chicago. And I tell you what, they had to pick up a phone and they had to call and enact their emergency response plan. I could not understand a word anyone said. I thought, well, if that's how they call it in, the fire department's going to be like, yeah, sure, okay, right? I mean, technology's there so they can figure out where they're at. But, I mean, some of these places are very rural. You want to make sure that you have them repeat that back so they know where they're going to save time. Because if you're calling them, there's a reason and it's not good. So when we look at rescue devices, there's two different devices that there are out there. There are automatic controlled descent devices that take very little training, okay? And then there's manual. So that goes back to our rescue pickup. So now we're adding that risk factor in, okay? So automatic controlled descent devices basically you let go, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They just start lowering down. And each manufacturer sets them a little different, but the standard is within 4 to 4.5 feet a second, okay? And then manual controlled descent devices basically are you're controlling that descent. And again, it's for that landing zone is potentially dangerous or we need to protect that person on the way down because they're going to bang into everything under the sun, okay? So when we talk about rescue, and I say this because it happens so often that if we didn't see how that fall is, we always have to protect what? The head and neck, right? So if they're suspended off their back deering, then that's where you're going to hook the rescue system. If they're suspended from the front deering and their body kind of goes like this, you're going to hook to the front deering. Don't flip their head forward just to get access to the back deering because you could potentially cause even more damage, okay? So that I always try to reiterate whatever they're suspended on, that's what you're gonna go to. So I talked really, really fast. You guys are still awake, bored to death, but that's okay. I feel you. So now there's a lovely box, so if anybody has any questions, or you just want to run out of here because it's like 3:30 at Thursday, right? Nothing? Oh, fire away.
That far?
So what he's asking is, does everybody know what a JSA or a JH is? So a job safety analysis or a job hazard analysis. So basically when you're out in the field, before you start your work, you and your team that you are out there doing your job, they basically fill this form out, and each company, there's some companies that are getting really crazy with digital ones. You got your iPad and you're doing all this stuff, and then they'll have to send it in and get it approved depending on the work that they're doing from their team, right? And so it's basically laying out more than just fall protection, but that's what we're just focusing on.
Our background is basically from where I'm from is a job hazard analysis is really a scope of all the things that could go wrong at that job site.
Yep.
But a job safety analysis is when you break down each task that you're doing, whether you're building a scaffold system or whether you're constructing a swing stage, including rigging it, you're identifying where somebody could be harmed or hurt in each one of those steps. So a JSA is much more complex, more comprehensive. A job hazard analysis is something that's a little bit more broad-based and just covers all the things that could happen while you're actually in that place of work. I was just curious if everybody knew or didn't know, because if you don't know what that is and we're talking about it, it doesn't really help you very
Well,
much.
and a lot of people look at it differently too.
Agreed.
A lot of companies look at it differently, which is where that fall protection program kind of comes into play. So now you're looking at all of those hazards and all of those potential what ifs, right? And that's what a program, that's what they basically lay out as a program does. But historically, that's exactly, I mean, that's how I grew up looking at it, was that way, but it keeps changing.
Lulu?
I was a little nervous about him getting in here. But yeah.
Just a question, and because we see it on the standards and also on the OSHA, just so that everyone, so we all understand, I think I got the idea. Prompt and timely.
Prompt.
I mean-
Okay. So you're right, because it says the employer shall provide for a prompt rescue. What does that really mean? So if you look back in it, it also states that you have to provide medical aid within 3 to 4 minutes. So there's your, now the reality is, now you will hear this. I can't swear. So I have been in so many places and everybody says, your fall protection is, your fine says being suspended for 15 minutes. That is not correct. There is absolutely zero time frame, and the only reason I say this is because I have physically witnessed it. Because a lot of the training that I used to do, we do a suspended lift, so it's just a static lift, and I had a guy pass out in 30 seconds, and I had to lower him down right away. So we are all built what? Differently. If you have a medical condition that you didn't even know about, that could take a play in it. Because when we're talking about suspension trauma, our brain needs what to function?
Oxygen,
How does it get there?
blood,
Through our blood. Our blood goes where?
heart,
Through our heart. So it's through circulation. If I take that and I cut that circulation off,
you're not getting any.
we're gonna have a problem, right? So your body will protect itself and just start shutting down. You pass out, you keep being suspended there, we're gonna have a problem.
Another question?
Is someone texting you questions?
No,
Okay.
sure. It's your coworker.
Becky, there's a letter of interpretation on the word prompt in this case. I think it's December of 2006. It says that they replaced the fuzzy word prompt, though, with another fuzzy word. It says in the letter that the word prompt means the rescue must be performed quickly
Yes.
in time to prevent serious harm to the worker. So there's no set, again, like she said,
Yeah,
no set
prompt,
time limit.
Quickly.
If they're good, it takes you 2 hours to get to them, and they're healthy when you get to them, that was prompt. If they
Yep.
die in a minute, that wasn't prompt.
Yep. Yeah, and again, it's all based on what? Whether the person is conscious or unconscious. Because there's so many things that we can do to mitigate that suspension and buy ourselves time for the rescue, right? So if they're suspended and we can tie a knot in the rope and they can stand up into it and they're talking and dancing and smoking a cigarette. I know some people have that video where the guy's smoking a cigarette waiting to get rescued. I don't show it anymore, but
Obviously, we all work at heights, so we know that 911 isn't really an answer for at least most of us here. Our customers struggle a lot with the height, meaning how high can a ladder go on a fire truck, which it depends.
it depends.
Well, we know how
Everywhere is
high-
different.
We know how high they go. They don't go higher than a couple hundred feet.
Yeah. Typically, they're not.
Sure.
They're not that high. But then you also have fire departments that do a lot of rope rescue training.
Which takes a long time.
Yes, it does. And I was a firefighter, so I could say this. We overthink the living daylights out of everything, right? We either break it or we overthink it.
That's the other thing you have to take into consideration is when the high angle rescue unit shows up, they're not going to run up
Shawnee.
over the edge of the building.
Sean. Hey, fella.
No, absolutely not.
They're going to assess. They're
But-
going to figure out what they're going to be able to anchor to. They have to do the same thing we had to do when we installed all the gear in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, the victim is still hanging.
You are correct. One of the things that we've learned is if you're choosing the fire department, have conversations with them, have drills with them, you will find out whether whatever plan is going to work. And there's some companies that have gotten, pretty good at that, at working with the fire departments and stuff like that. Anybody else?
Self-rescue.
You.
Obviously, having a retractable and not being able to travel so you can get back up. Trauma straps are a good way to,
That's suspension mitigation.
you know,
Yeah.
be able to, get yourself some more time to get it
Yep.
together after you
Yeah,
freak
that
out.
buys us a ton of time.
After
As
you
long
freak
as they
out.
stay conscious throughout the whole thing.
I would also add that there is issues that could be a machine-to-machine rescue. So if you're talking about a mobile elevated work platform,
Oh, amen. Yep.
you're going to have a machine-to-machine rescue. You also have, as you identified earlier, we have machines that will go 300 feet in the air.
If you've got it,
Truck
use
and a
it,
Boom lift.
right?
911 will not be of great assistance in those particular cases. So there is a level of planning that needs to be taken into account, which is the height of this, and so 911 will not be a default call in those particular cases. So again, there's a level of pre-planning that needs to take place with that. There are suspension trauma straps that can be provided as part of your PPE.
That just buys you time, but yeah, yep.
What's that?
Yeah, it buys you time for the rescue, yeah.
And as I said, because there are times when it is not an emergency, so there's equipment failure. Person is there, but, could be, it's, 20 below and the wind is blowing and the emergency is based on the environmental conditions. So there is a very detailed analysis that needs to go into a general plan.
Yep.
That you can go into those as you get to the very specific job site.
Oh, very much so. Do you want to hand him the?
Good throw. In regards to equipment rescue, just be mindful. In the province of Ontario, the CSA has intruded with, we just bought a Genie, a brand new Genie lift, and we were doing some work on it, some training, and we realized that 500 pounds now on a elevated work platform, it's 500 pounds. So it's a brand new, fully electric Z60. We went up with 2 trainees, and it locked out. We were unable to get the trainees down because of the glitch in this brand new, fully electric machine. What our contractors are doing on site is, or even the welders, sometimes you'll see them on site, and you're not supposed to be lifting anything with an elevated work platform. So that's why the CSA, that's why they changed that. So now there's a chip in this new equipment that if you overload it, so if I go up, with myself and I try to rescue myself at the top, as soon as the other person comes on the platform, the machine locks out because CSA says 500 pounds is 500 pounds. So that's what these new machines are. So if you're looking
Oh,
at
that's gonna hurt.
equipment rescue, and this was a glitch with the brand new machine that we got. So if you're looking at that, you need to also be mindful of that too as well.
Oh, it's up here with Jim and David.
There you go.
Thank you. What you're describing on that machine is a new feature on the machines, which is called load sensing, which is set to lock out when you reach a certain height. However, also part of that requirement in that design standard is that the emergency descent control functions are always enabled. So despite the fact that the machine functions will be cut out, you should have went to your auxiliary function, and that would allow you to still lower that machine.
Yes, that's correct in what you said 100%, but this brand new machine from Genie, we were unable to lower it down. The technician had to come in and override the system, and they had to call Texas to get a special code to override the system, and they had to change the chip in the brand new machine. So I'm just letting you know that if you plan to do rescue on any type of mobile elevated work platform and it's a newer equipment, just make sure that equipment does not lock out. We tested it, we put some weights on it, and it did the same thing when we had the 500-pound counterweights that we put on from the swing stage. It would not go up, it would not come down. So just be mindful of that, please.
That's good information to have. Anybody else?
It's unique, normally it works. Normally it works, yes.
You're welcome. All right, well, thank you very much.